Hello YouTube and future examiners. This is going to be my answer to question 1 of my A2 media evaluation. If you're not here for media studies work or anything to do with evaluation, then there will be other videos in the future that will be more entertaining. This is just purely for my work. Question 1 of the evaluation is: in what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge the forms and conventions of a real media product? For my media product, we created a horror film. So the real media product would be the forms and conventions of any horror film, such as stereotypes, locations, distinct, jump scares and blood and gore, all that can be used to describe any horror film. Distinct stands for don't ignore settings, technical codes, iconography, narrative, characterization and theme. Getting on with the point, settings in horror films tend to be isolated locations that are abandoned, like abandoned hospitals, abandoned churches, or abandoned cabins in the woods, somewhere scary and ominous, where the audience can get a sense of isolation themselves, making them feel uncomfortable, and also they will be fully aware that the protagonist and the victims are vulnerable to any attacks in a horror film that might happen. By having the abandoned location, this ensures that the audience reaches the full maximum vulnerability, which makes them more accessible to jump scares and achieving the goals of a horror film, that is to scare them. I use this form and convention of isolated locations in my horror film by having my protagonist and victim in an isolated, empty, abandoned school. I chose a school because not only would it convey the target audience of young adults and teens, but also the audience would know that a school should be full of life, full of energy, full of living people, and to have it quiet and empty with only 1 or 2 people there shows this weird juxtapose between the light and happy and the dark and sinister, which causes the audience to feel more uncomfortable and more vulnerable to jump scares. I simply showed this through establishing shots of an empty playground, empty classrooms, empty stairs and hallways. It also shows that I developed the form and convention, not just use it as I've just explained. Another part of distinct that I used in the form and conventions was a technical code, such as camera works and camera shots. I used point of view shots of Sierra running, my protagonist, canted angles to build tension of the victim so the audience can feel uneasy as they watch. I used a mixture of high angle shots and low angle shots to give different perspectives of the action. I used long shots of the protagonist so we could see in the distance the shadow voices. It's one of those things that you would see and then as they flash you'll be like,
oh wait, there was something there.
And make the audience again be like,
oh, what's going on?
A dolly shot on my protagonist Sierra just before a jump scare, so we drew in the audience physically as they watched. All these shots conveyed different emotions and different effects, such as the fear in the protagonist's eyes as they try to save someone, the race against time, the suspense before to see whether she will be able to save the victim or not. Another form and convention I used was iconography with visual style. I was really intrigued by German Expressionism and their black and white painted sets and like Nosferatu and all those old styles, and especially when in the history of horror, when colour came in through film, the first colour that really popped was colour red against this black and white, almost clear vision of expression. The red really popped out to the audience and actually struck more fear as blood. So I followed the black and white theme throughout, whether it be silhouetted shots of trees against a white sky or the ink flowing through the white background as the time. And the ink block test that also showed that Sierra, my protagonist, was going through psychiatric type help, as it conveyed her like insanity, whether it was real or not, or is it just reality. Didn't mean to rhyme there, sorry. In my opening title sequence I used black ink dripping through water, which also made it obviously very strange and very awkward. But at the very end, after the death of my victim, sorry for spoilers, after the death of my victim I dripped red into it and it kind of merged together and it finished the film as the red really popped out against the black and white. So the black and white and red style is used throughout my whole film. In a way, I developed the style further in a more modern take. In a way, I challenged the convention of like iconography of props, such as, you know how usually the murderer would have a knife or an axe or something that you don't need to see the whole killer with, you can just see the shot of the weapon and you know it's related to the bad guy. In my film, I challenged it by having the ink blots as a sign or as a symbol, yes, for Sierra's reality or whether it's right or wrong, but also a sign as a warning there might be a death of someone. The film would start with her surrounded in ink blots and the whispers of the shadow voices behind her, and then we'll see the shadow voices flickering and they'll reach for her, and then as she turns, the whispers are gone, no one's there, and so are the ink blots. However, there's a shot of her picking up her art book after this, a drawing of the ink blots there. So this connects her to the eventual death of the victim. So at this stage of the film, it's very unclear whether she's trying to save the victim or whether she's the reason why there is a victim. Throughout this video, I've mentioned how I've used forms and conventions, how I've developed some, and even slightly touched on how I've challenged some forms and conventions. But the main form and conventions that I have challenged is blood and gore. Making my film, I didn't want to be like the student type film with horror, gore, fake blood, zombies, vampires, you know, all that almost cliche. It's no doubt that blood and gore is the reason why horror films are so horror-ish. There's something just repulsive about seeing too much blood or too much gore that makes an audience squeamish, therefore scared, which is the whole point of a horror film. However, just because I knew I was on a budget, I didn't want to be full-on fake blood and everything. I challenge it by rarely having any blood in there. The only blood that really was signified in my film was red ink drops into the water with the black ink. It's not very clear in the film, but my shadow voices, the ghosty girls, all in black, they had blood tears, if you will, down their face, but because they're so far away or so in the distance or out of focus or so quick in flashing that you don't really get to really acknowledge that until we see one of them point towards the door and it opens and you see a close-up of her face for a moment. But as a form convention, I still have it in there in its own way that is creative and more classy, in that it's not all blood and gore and just ugh. Hopefully this has conveyed my answer to question 1 of the evaluation of media studies. I hope I have portrayed enough information and analysis to it. If you have any ideas or questions or inputs about this, if this even helps you with your evaluation, please let me know below. I hope you enjoy this presentation as a vlog. I tried to do some things different for each question. So yeah, if you enjoyed this or it was helpful, or you think I've done a good job at answering the question, please give it a thumbs up, like or comment, or even subscribe if you want. It will be much appreciated and encourage me to do more videos that are more entertaining perhaps. Thanks for watching, bye!